Welcome to the fourth part of our webinar series, Promoting Positive Transitions. This webinar series is based on Hopford et al.'s model in 2007. The model highlights 5 areas to consider when we're supporting the recovery from trauma. My name is Bonita Liang, and I am an educational psychologist in Newham. In our session today, we are going to focus on one of the 5 areas, nurturing a state of calmness. Everyone is being affected by the pandemic in a different way, and our experiences are going to be different for each individual. And it is okay and normal for us to feel overwhelmed and have an increased level of stress or anxiety at some point. But experiencing a high level of strong emotions over a period of time can become problematic because it can have an impact on our daily functioning, and we might find it more difficult to do things that we can usually do easily. From neuroscience research, we know that when we are calm and we feel connected with other people, we are more able to use the parts of our brain that are responsible for reasoning and for problem solving. And when we are feeling overwhelmed by our strong emotions, we will find it more difficult to activate and use these parts of the brain. And that is why when we are trying to reason and trying to problem solve with someone when they're feeling very upset, it's going to be very hard. And that is because the problem solving parts of their brains are not activated when they are experiencing these strong feelings. And that is why it's very important for us to focus on developing a strong foundation of emotion regulation and nurture the state of calmness across the school community. And this includes the children and young people, staff members, as well as families. Once we feel regulated and we will be more able to connect and relate with other people. And only then we will be able to use our problem solving parts of the brain and be ready to learn. So, here are some of the ideas as to how we can support children and young people in school. We can consider to build in regular times for calming activities. So things like breathing exercises, mindfulness practices could be helpful. Sometimes movements and physical exercise could also help children to calm as well. Routines, structures, and boundaries could help children and young people to feel safer and more secured in their environment. And that can reduce their anxiety level and help them to feel calmer. Play is another way that could be helpful because it enables the children to express the emotions in a different language, in a language that they can understand. And they can use play to process what these emotions mean to them and to make sense of them. Having daily opportunities for children and young people for emotional check ins and making time for them to talk about their feelings could also be helpful. And in the process, it is important for us to acknowledge that everyone have good days and we all have bad days as well. And they are all okay. It's okay to have a range of feelings, and we need to take the children's lead when we are trying to talk about feelings. We need to let them decide whether they want to talk about it. But to encourage that to happen, as adults, we can start to model and to show children that it's okay to talk about feelings. We can talk about our own feelings, the positive as well as the negative feelings and experiences. Having a space to calm down could also be helpful for children and young people to have access to. Model and teach emotion regulation strategies. So I know that a lot of schools have the interventions and the programs that they are already using. So it could be about revisiting them and helping the children and young people to consolidate the skills that they're using already. And modeling could be particularly helpful because it shows the children and young people about what exactly it would look like in practice. And in the process, it would be helpful to encourage children and young people to reflect and to think about what helped them in the past to calm themselves. It could be empowering to remind them of times when they were able to successfully regulate themselves. And when children and young people are in distress, we can use these opportunities to support them to develop the emotion regulation skills. Emotion coaching could be a useful strategy to support this process, and it includes 4 steps. By going through these 4 steps, we're showing children and young people that we recognize their feelings and we are validating how they feel. But we're also supporting them to problem solve and to think about more effective ways to manage and cope with their emotions. Children often look to the adults who are around them to help them to regulate their emotions. And that's why it's very important for us to make sure we are feeling okay. Because when adults are finding it difficult to regulate our own emotions, we will definitely struggle to help the children to regulate theirs. So it is important to make sure we put our oxygen mask on before we help other people. And here are some ideas in terms of how we can support staff members. Noticing the signs when we are feeling stressed or anxious, and encouraging staff members to seek support when they need to. Having the open and honest discussions with them and sharing our feelings could be helpful. Reminding staff self-care strategies. So this could include things that we are doing already, and we just making sure that we can continue to do them to reduce our stress levels. We also need to practice self-acceptance and have realistic expectations for ourselves. There are times when we can only be good enough, and that is okay. Providing space for regular emotion check-ins for staff could be helpful. Regular briefings to inform staff of new changes and updates could reduce anxiety level as well. Consider having some wobble rooms or other safe space for staff members so that when they're feeling overwhelmed during the school day, they have somewhere to go to regain their composure, and help the staff members to develop support network for themselves so that they have a space to discuss their concerns and issues. And they can also encourage staff members to support each other. In terms of supporting families, it's important to consider having clear communication about any changes and updates. That can definitely reduce some anxiety levels about uncertainties. Having regular check ins and signposting families to services or other revenues that they can seek support. And supporting families to work with their children. For example, we can share resources that we found helpful in supporting our children and helping the caregivers to use these resources so that they feel more confident in supporting their children. Sharing up-to-date facts from trustworthy sources could also reduce anxiety levels of the family. And helping parents and caregivers to develop support network for themselves could be a good way to provide a space for families to share any concerns and issues that they're having, and to encourage parents and caregivers to support each other. Thank you very much for listening. I hope the webinar has been useful for you today. Our next webinar will focus on the last area of the hopeful model, and it's going to be focused on remaining hopeful.